going to call this meeting of the Development Review Board for the City of Montpelier this Monday, April 21st, to order. We will let the staff do the details, the technical details.
All right, so I'm going to share my screen for people who haven't done this with us before. The stuff on the screen is mostly for people who might be watching the meeting via Wikimedia, so they know how to attend. But there's stuff in my spiel for everybody who's on remotely. So for anyone viewing tonight's Development Review Board meeting via Wikimedia, you can participate in the discussion via the Zoom platform through either video or telephone access options. If you type this link into your web browser, you'll get the full meeting experience. Alternatively, you can dial this phone number and then log in using this meeting ID. If you either one of those options, I'll get a note that you want to get admitted to the meeting and let you in. If anyone is trying to access the meeting and having difficulties, please email me at mcrandall@montpelier-vt.org. I will be monitoring my email throughout the meeting. For those attending via Zoom, turning your video on is optional. And if for some reason you're having trouble with a connection, sometimes turning off your video leaves enough bandwidth for the audio. For everyone attending, please keep your microphone on mute when you're not speaking. This will help reduce background noise. And we do ask that if you aren't an applicant presenting, or that you please raise your hand if you wish to speak and wait until the chair calls on you. And just make sure that it's clear who's talking. First time that you're speaking, we do ask that you give your name, an address, or association with the application, especially if your name isn't on an application as the applicant. The Zoom chat function should only be used for troubleshooting or logistics questions. Let's see, I think everybody on remotely right now is a board member or associated with a specific application. And so I can skip some of this. We do have somebody who's using a phone, so know that for your phone access, if you're not actually logged into Zoom via that, but have just called in, you can use *6 to mute and unmute your phone via the Zoom app, and *9 to raise the hand on that you want to be called on. All right, in the event the public is unable to access this meeting, then it will need to be continued to a time and place certain. All right, I will hand the meeting back over to the chair.
Okay, can we first start by introducing ourselves, board members?
Rob Goodwin, Vice Chair.
Kevin O'Connell, member.
Joe?
And Joe Kiernan, board member.
Sharon Allen, chair.
Meredith Crandall, staff.
I'll motion to approve again.
That's great.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Thank you. A couple of things that I wanted to go over before we got started here today. Meredith, I had a conversation about this a little while ago about how I look at applications, and it's really helpful for me to look at applications like this. So I just thought I'd share it in case it was helpful for you too. And that is the staff report is like the cherry on the top. I read everything else first, the regulations where the applications kind of front to back, all that good stuff, and sort of kind of settle it in my mind where I think things are. And then I go to the staff report and look at it and say, oh, all right, that makes sense. Or, that doesn't make sense. So it's just the way that I do it. And I find it's pretty helpful. I don't think there was anything else. I guess the next comments I'm going to save for when the applicant is actually up here. Unless there's any reason to, let's have the first applicant up. It's not you.
No.
So
My colleague Nicole Gratton's online.
Oh, okay, Nicole, sorry. So I guess let's first swear in everybody who might give testimony on this application. So Nicole and anybody else.
I mean, I'm happy to.
Okay.
Eric, if you think you might talk on this one, you're going to need to be sworn in. So you can just raise your right hand and unmute yourself to when you say aye, just in case you have a comment to throw in.
Okay. All those that might testify, please raise your right hand. You solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth under the pains and penalties of perjury.
I do.
Great. Thank you. All right, Nicole, let's see. If you can, you want to just kind of give us a brief overview of this project?
Yes, no problem. My name is Nicole Grattan. I work for Preservation Trust of Vermont, and we are before you this evening to talk about the building at 5 Home Farm Way in Montpelier. This is a high Greek revival building that we are looking to have deconstructed for many reasons, including safety and flood resiliency. But the goal is to work with you guys, the city of Montpelier, to have the permitting in place so that we can deconstruct the building. The elements of the building will be repurposed by the deconstruction firm, and then a demolition crew will come in to crush the concrete foundation into the existing hole and fill it to grade. Meredith shared with me we need to know a little bit more about where those water and wastewater lines are. And so we did have DigSafe out there this week, and I think we can be getting that information to you shortly. But really, at the end of the day, while we are a historic preservation organization, this building really poses a challenge in many ways. Safety first, and then also just flood resiliency. By helping take this building out of the floodplain, we can be helping the whole water chain right into Montpelier. I have lots of details, so if you have questions about what deconstruction is or what's going to be happening, I'm here and I can be answering those for you.
It is a very detailed application. Thank you for that. Particularly thought the appraisal was done a couple of years ago. It was really fascinating. By Martin Associates, I think, Lucas Martin. That was very thorough. I was really quite impressed with that. So the our big concern in this is and with so much support from all the historical organizations, I don't think that there's a lot of questions out there. Do other board members have thoughts about the application? I'm definitely going to talk about like section 3004, but just in general, or anything about the application? All right, Joe.
Well, this building has been kicking around for quite a while and trying to find a resolution for that. This current application is extremely detailed. I'm hopeful that we can do that and really stop having to reinvent the wheel every time this comes up. It needs to happen. That's my feeling.
I guess one thing I thought about when I was reading this application is that there is such a pronounced and clear public benefit
Absolutely.
to using that property as a flood mitigation. I mean, that's something that is really important to all of Montpelier.
And I mean, I have a great deal of sympathy for historical structures and the desire to preserve them, but this is one that really needs to move along. I mean, Montpelier is dealing with lots of flood elements, and this is one that we just don't need to keep carrying along.
I guess the other thing that struck me about the application was the potential, the cost of actually restoring it to anything was phenomenal to me.
Yep.
$3 million, I just, whoa, that's a lot. Considering what you'd be left with and compared to the public benefit of flood mitigation. It's like, oh, okay. Rob, did you want to say something?
Oh, yeah, I just think before we get into, I guess it's gonna be economic viability, but sort of predecessor to that would be, my understanding there were sort of two major efforts in the last 20 years to sort of fix this. One was the foundation that was done pre-FoodWorks, and then FoodWorks did some work. I just didn't know if you had a little bit of timeline, just like a summary of, what was done in both of those efforts and, what didn't work.
Well, this was before my time, but
Yeah.
just into that building, you can tell that things weren't done well. So I believe it was in the early 2000s that FoodWorks had the building elevated. So it is on top of probably a 4-foot concrete foundation on top of the old fieldstone foundation to bring it up, but it wasn't put in correctly. So in many places, the concrete foundation extends over where the building is. So we have building that comes down and actually hits upon the concrete foundation, which a foundation shouldn't be doing that. And then there were other efforts by, I'm not sure who, to take care of things within the building. But again, they were either stalled out or were never completed. And it kind of left this building in a state of uncompletedness that helped exacerbate the decay that we are seeing in the building now. It's a really sad thing. Like when you go in there, you can definitely, with your historic preservation lens, see like the grandeur of this building back in its day. But sadly, some decisions along the way and just lack of care have kind of left it in a really sad state.
This is Eric. I guess I'd like to make a comment here if possible.
Okay.
You got to give your full
Can you
name,
give
Eric.
your name and your
Eric
address?
Johnson. To be clear, I was an employee of the Preservation Trust up until 2 years ago. I retired. I was an employee for about 17 years, and I was very much involved with this property. And neither I nor the Preservation Trust are very prone to demolishing buildings. And every effort was made to save this building, every reasonable effort to save it. The repairs that Nicole talked about, there were so many bad repairs done to that building. One that I don't think shows up in the written stuff is the roof rafters are held onto the plate with 1x3s with one nail on each end, and it just goes on and on. All the bad repairs were done. The perimeter drain was backfilled with clay, and the house doesn't fit the foundation. So it's in a bad shape, but it is a really important building in Montpelier. That's why the Historic Preservation Commission would like to save as many pieces as we can and reuse them, either in a new building that somebody wants it for decoration, hopefully in restoration and things like that. And I believe the Montpelier Historical Society would like some part of the building that they could put on display. But I think this is the only alternate for this building. It's hard to see it go, but that's a number of mishaps has happened, both legal and otherwise, that make it impossible to save it.
Thank you. Do you have a comment?
Yeah, I just Ben Doyle.
Wait, no, you have to come into the microphone.
And say your name.
Ben
please.
Doyle with
Thank
Preservation
you.
Trust of Vermont. Nicole is really the point person on this project, but have done a lot of work on this as well. Actually, in my previous job at USDA Rural Development, I remember going to site to visit this property. And I can say with confidence for over a decade, the Preservation Trust has tried to find, and we don't own this, right?
Right.
But we have, as a preservation organization, tried for over a decade to try and find another nonprofit entity that could take this on and rehabilitate it. And really, after the 23 flood, with a estimate of approaching $4 million of rehabilitation of a building that's in the floodway, it really isn't economically feasible or frankly, morally feasible to invest additional public funds in the building in that way. And, the best thing that we could look at, the best outcome we could find was a project that led to the potential floodplain restoration on the 11 acres of the site, which is phase 2 of a project. But, in that sense, the justification that we can make is that we're trying to mitigate potential future flooding for other historic buildings that can be saved. And so I just want to emphasize, it is a tragedy. This is a really important property. We've documented it extremely well. We're doing other mitigation around the loss of this historic structure, but you know, as somebody pointed out, pretty much every historic preservation organization, including State Historic Preservation Officer and the local Preservation Commission, has acknowledged that this is the best outcome that we can find right now.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I had a question, and I don't, this is, I think, more curiosity than this application right here. Who is going to be doing the restoration, the floodplain restoration? Yeah, I guess if you know the
That's
answer to that.
So the deconstruction of the house
Right.
is being paid for through a grant through Vermont Emergency Management.
Mhm.
And it's the deconstruction of the house and then the pre-engineering for a future floodplain restoration project. And that engineering is nearing completion. And then the city of Montpelier has submitted a grant application, a hazard mitigation grant application for the implementation of that floodplain restoration.
Okay, great.
So it's not guaranteed. The grant hasn't been
Sure.
received. Simply the engineering for the project has been done and the grant application, I believe, has been filed.
Okay, thank you very
Yep.
much. That's very helpful. Other comments from the board? Other comments from the public?
Steve Whitaker. I've been only minimally involved in the project. I marvel at the irony of Preservation Trust doing neither on this project. In fact, the misstatement just made that it is in the floodway, whereas this map included in your packet clearly shows that that building is not in the floodway. So that I had encouraged when the discussion was going on that we preserve the building, even if we don't know who's going to restore it, because we have continually undermined and narrowed and precluded and preempted our options for locations. This location has water and sewer, and there's a building that even part of could be made functional. Our city saw fit to put a shelter in the Elks Club property with no shower for an entire year.
That is irrelevant to this
It
This
is relevant
application.
because the potential use of that building out of the floodway while the flood mitigation, I heard y'all suggesting, oh, this is so necessary to get rid of this building for the floodway restoral or the mitigation, lowering the flood absorption zone. But that's all irrelevant to the knoll that this house is sitting on. So this is a historic structure. If we did half of the effort to find a potential team to restore and correct the damage that has been done, that we do, manipulating our city plan or, attempting to, I think it's sad because I hear no one fighting to preserve this building or relocate it. Whereas both of those are options under a higher degree of diligence, which we haven't exhibited here. So to be told that this is in the floodway when clearly your own exhibits show that it is not in the floodway.
It's not, it wasn't said, that does not say it's in the floodway. It says that
Ben Doyle just said it was in the floodway.
the application says that it's going to be used for flood mitigation in the future.
But that knoll will not be leveled below to the area. It's the fields behind it that will be leveled. for
I
flood
understand.
mitigation.
I understand what your point is. Thank you. Anything else?
Well, I can tell you really don't want to consider. You had your minds made up before you got here.
There was a very thorough application with a lot of history built into that application. And I thought they did a really good job of identifying what was possible and what wasn't possible and what associated costs were. I feel pretty confident that this application has looked at those questions. Thank you. So the other thing that we should look at, and this is section 3004 demolition. And I feel like I've heard everybody's regret here, and the application looks to me as if people have been trying endlessly to figure out a way to save this building, and that they have not been able to, in a way that is economically feasible, I guess is what I would say. That's that's an extraordinary amount of money for that. The then we have, well, let's just kind of go through these so we look. Applicability, it definitely is applicable, this section. Development review process, that talks about what we're going to do here. And unless otherwise required, applications for demolition shall be reviewed in the same manner as other administrative permits. I think we're fine there. The application will be reviewed under the conditional use section, which is what this is. So there is a remediation requirement in this section. An application for demolition shall include demolition and site remediation plan, which at the minimum describes the intended use of the site, the manner in which it will meet the standards below and the review standards. So I think it's important. So this permit is for demolishing the building, to take it apart, and it's not for the flood mitigation or anything else. That is all a different permit and a different permitting process. This is simply for the demolition of the building. I'm happy to hear that people are interested in saving what they can of the building to be reused in other historical restoration. I'm just going to throw it in there. It would be really cool if part of the signage could include something from the house so that they could use it. Obviously, you can do whatever you want, but I was like, that would be so neat if we could have like a doorknob or a window frame or something in the thing that showed some of the age and beauty of the structure. Okay.
I'm sure I would argue that it doesn't meet the economic viability.
And you can actually start talking
You have to
like
speak
that.
at the microphone so that everybody can hear and you have to be called on.
Did you have a comment you wanted to make?
About this
Identify yourself. Just thanks.
economic viability standard, and I don't see from my reading through the packet, I don't see that we've met. And I won't dissect them, but that's your job and your staff's job. The economic viability standard is not met in the packet before you.
I guess I don't agree with you. Thank you very much. All right. So it does sound like, I'm sorry.
Eric, you got to raise your hand and wait for Sharon to call on you.
Hi, Eric. Did you have a comment?
Just a quick one. I've been doing historic preservation stuff professionally for over 50 years. And I think this is the first time I've ever testified in favor of demolishing a building. In the economic viability of doing anything with this is just not there. And it's part of what Mr. Whitaker says. Everything possible was considered, as far as I can see. And I've been dealing with this building for probably 20 years.
Thank you. So it does say that the debris, I guess this is a question for you, Nicole, that in the process of the demolition, they're talking, do you think you're going to be able to hit all of those timelines that are in there? You know, the 14 days, debris remaining on the site for more than 14 days. And I guess I was also, how long do you think the whole demolition process is going to take?
I think of it as like 2 phases. So even before we start, we need a permit. So that's why
Yeah.
we're
Yes.
and the deconstruction will take place. And so we have deconstruction works lined up. He's hoping to get started by the end of May, but if he needs to wait until June, obviously we will be doing that. And then the second part is the demolition of just the foundation. And we have complete demolition works out of Fairfax coming in to do that work. And he knows that he needs to be wrapped up by the end of October. And so between those 2 contractors, they're feeling that they can meet that timeline as we need to by both the bylaws and our timeline, given the funding that's wrapped into this project.
I'm a little confused because of the timeline that you just gave me, that you want to start in May and finish in October.
Well, we won't be starting have a permit in hand. I just want to let you know that Tom Shea, who's with Deconstruction Works, is ready to go once we have all the paperwork in place. And so
Okay.
happening hopefully early summer. And then once the building has been deconstructed and the site is cleared of all the materials above ground, then the demolition team will come in to crush the foundation and wrap up the site, so that it's all at grade.
Meredith? Thank you.
Um,
Go on, sorry.
So deconstruction inherently takes longer than demolition.
Sure.
So our zoning regulations don't have a provision for deconstruction procedures. I actually recently took a webinar on the difference between deconstruction and demolition
Sure.
specifically for historic structures. And so Nicole, just to clarify for you, because our regs don't differentiate between the two, there is a 60-day, typically a 60-day time period to demolish a building and finish the whole process from commencement. So I think that in this situation, if the board wanted to, they could give a longer timeline, because June through end of November is not 60 days.
Right.
That's much longer than that.
Yeah.
So I think that the board has an option to give some other, conditions
So,
in the final, if they were going to approve this,
mm,
to stretch that out, given that this isn't what most people think of as traditional demolition.
so Nicole, to maybe help decide the board or inform our decision, do you have a sense of how long just the deconstruction portion would take?
I could look back at what we have in a contract from Deconstruction Works, but I do think he needs time because he will be putting up different elements of the building and hopefully selling from site. So rather than him deconstructing the entire timber frame, bringing it to a warehouse and selling it from there, he sells it from site. So that takes a little bit longer in his process. So in our timeline, we're giving him from that June-ish date, again, permits in hand before we do anything, through the summer to take care of this, I'm gonna call it the above ground structure. And then the underground structure will be taken out in the fall, but it will definitely be longer than 60 days, just given that deconstruction is literally the unbuilding of a building. So it will take longer for us.
It occurs to me that that perhaps we could separate this out a little bit because I do think deconstruction is very different than demolition, and that maybe what we could do is give an extension of that 60-day period for the deconstruction, and then maybe when it becomes time to do the actual demolition of the base and the ground and all of that, that once that has started, that has to be finished within 60 days. Because that strikes me as more the demolition part of the project.
Well, and it also provides a focus on that last part, which is the actual demolition. Getting that.
Right. So I do think we should set up some, I mean, I don't think it would be a problem to prove something that gives them through the summer to sell from the site. That makes a lot of sense to me. But I think that we should specify that.
Yeah, I guess I would suggest an overall time period for the completion and then have the contractor or preservation trust just provide a schedule, a condition of approval as to laying out the
Timeline.
for what's gonna happen when, and we don't have to pick a time here on the record and they
Right.
can just submit a document that can be referred to.
Okay, so you'd propose that they just hand out a timeline,
Yeah.
and but that we need to do an extension of the 60 days because it's clearly not going to meet that.
Yeah, I think what I was going for is from issuance to execution of the entire, process.
Yeah.
A certain amount of time, I think a year or whatnot, because we want to make sure that this happens, like,
Right.
I think that, we don't want to.
Stop it halfway because it's 3 months in.
That was my concern too, was that we start up the process of deconstructing / demolition, and then gets stalled for whatever reason.
Well, I certainly don't want it to stall because of our decision. I can tell you that.
Right.
So I think a schedule and a year from it would be reasonable to tidy everything up, but probably don't want it to go through the winter. They got materials that they have to, protect or whatnot, but pick time frame.
It'll be 6 months if it started in June.
Yeah.
Seems like a fairly long period of time, although it's not when you get into it. But we could start with that kind of timeline in mind, I would think.
So if we have, if we do move to approve this project tonight, their permit could be in hand probably by May.
Yep.
So that would give them May, June, July, August, September, October. That's 6 months. And there is a concern of trying to get all that, deconstruction someplace weatherproof, and, you do kind of want to take care of that in a bit too. Nicole, thoughts on that?
I think that'll be fine. The funding for this project needs to be wrapped up by the end of this calendar year, so that kind of aligns with what you're proposing. I'm just thinking to myself that we never know what July is going to bring. So I would like as much wiggle room as possible, just knowing sometimes Julys can really hit places like Montpelier pretty hard. And if that were to delay something, if we could have until the end of 2025, that would be great.
I think that's fine. Okay, so we need to change that as we think about things. Is there, I'm just curious, is there a place where historic materials are stored? Nicole?
I don't know, but this is the work that Deconstruction Works is very familiar with. So they have their routines of where things go if they're not able to sell from the site. But if that's information you need, I can definitely get that from the contractor.
Nope, I was just curious. Okay,
I'm just curious. When was the last time, does anybody know, that the building was actually used for a purpose?
it was used partially as a purpose by Foodworks. So,
They had a kids summer camp.
yeah, but they did use the structure at that point. But in terms of people living in it, I don't think that says anywhere in the application.
No.
Eric, do you have any idea of that?
Food Work was the last to use it, and they really just used the barn and maybe part of the house. But I don't think anybody's lived in there since the family moved out or used the property in any other than a temporary way. That's my recollection, and I think they might have moved out in the 70s sometime.
Okay, so it's been that.
It's
Yeah.
in the report somewhere, Nicole, but I don't remember exactly when that family moved out.
That's pretty,
The first Foodworks permit we have on file was from 1990.
yeah.
And then, yeah. So it's
Okay.
been a long time.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can age yourself on some of these projects.
Yeah. I won't say where I was in 1990.
I think we gotta go through the criteria of number 3.
Okay.
Here. And kind of the first two, seems like we maybe have a decision to make of if it's an income producing or a non-income producing property. There's kind of 2 separate criteria for each under 3A and 3B of economic viability.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I didn't lay them both out in the
That's okay.
staff report. Cause it's not, at least recently, right? It hasn't been like just somebody's residence. So it was intended to be used as part of a process that was originally, bringing in income, but it's just been vacant for so long at this point.
Yeah, well, I guess I was gonna just, I mean, it's in the 100-year floodplain, so was the foundation raised up like above the base flood elevation or no? Yes?
Some of it.
It was raised up to the standard at the time.
Sure, but that does.
But
that
it's
doesn't,
not,
exempt you from the requirement that you get flood insurance if you wanna sell the property, correct?
Ben has something to say.
Just,
Sorry, the chair
Oh.
actually has to call on you, not me.
sorry.
I was
Yeah,
trying to
go
let them
ahead.
know. that-
Just for what it's worth from the department, we asked the Department of Environmental Conservation to comment on it, and they wrote, this is the Ned Swanberg, the floodplain manager for Central Vermont. All of the parcel is within the special flood hazard area and the river corridor. Most of the parcel is within the floodway, an area exposed to higher frequency and higher velocity of flooding. In terms of commercial viability for anything to happen on the site, probably the thing that trumps all of that is that there's a conservation easement on the property that would prevent commercial activity. Really, only a nonprofit entity could own this building. And so it wouldn't be generating income.
No, I think that's helpful. I think where I was going is that, flood insurance per a month is not cheap. And so for somebody to, economically viability sense, do something with this parcel, no matter what it is, I think you're gonna have a hard time, justifying putting $3 million worth of work into this, and not having any, flood insurance, and that's a recurring cost over time. So for me, the writing is on the wall is that it's not income producing and it's
Unlikely to be.
Economic viable.
Yep. I concur with that. I mean, I guess I feel like it really hits pretty much everything that's in there in section 3, that it's not gonna be income producing.
Yeah, I think section CI, we heard testimony about, structural soundness, the, rehabilitation efforts that have been done, were done correctly, probably some safety hazards there, as things go on, if no rehabilitation happens at all.
Right.
So I guess we seem to have some of the best experts on this matter in the state, here testifying, and I think they hit, most all of the points laid out in the,
In the application.
in the application and, this section that we have to go by.
Yeah.
I think in the past, we've struggled with economic viability, in town, we're doing these applications. And to me, it just hasn't necessarily been,
It's easy to see
as easy to see.
as this one.
It's a unique circumstance for sure.
I mean, it's been empty since the 70s, so that, I mean, just a house being unoccupied for that long can, it can be pretty bad,
Well, it can be a hazard too. I mean, bunch of kids, bicycling on a summer afternoon and.
Yeah.
Yeah, looks like fun.
I guess the other thing that it's part of, it does seem that that floodplain mitigation in that area might indeed protect some of downtown at a future point, which is certainly an economic point. That was very expensive for everyone. I think that hits the public benefit standard as well. Okay.
was wondering if you could just speak a little bit, someone to the sort of methods for documentation of the historic building and, what's been done over the years. I know you had some info in the application, but it'd be helpful to have a summary there.
Nicole?
Yeah.
Hi, Nicole.
I'm sorry, can you repeat the question? It was just hard to.
Just sort of like a brief summary of the, the methods that you've gone through to document the architectural integrity of the building and this, important historic features.
Well, I think, as you heard Eric kind of share, that's been going on for a long time, even just informally, but formally as part of this grant funding to help kind of just pave the pathway forward. A historic resource documentation package was put together by Polly Seaton Allen. And within that document, she kind of outlines the entire history of that building, like why it was built there, how the infrastructure of the roads and the rail lines kind of encroached upon that building. So her documentation is incredibly helpful. And then I believe there's something else that we put in that application process. I'm blanking on it, but it's really the HRDP, the Historic Resource Documentation Package, that really outlines where this building has come through the centuries. I mean, she's been there a long, long time. Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
Okay.
No, it does.
I would, if someone was interested in making a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve the deconstruction and demolition of the farmway. Okay, for the
And then this you might need but I don't know, you can read my scribble.
the deconstruction and, okay,
Yeah,
you're gonna have to help out.
Yeah, just
Okay,
read this and
Uh,
then here, jump to that.
okay, here we go. Motion to grant the request to deconstruct and demolish the historic building known as number 5 Home Farm Way with attached barn as presented in application number Z-2025-0019 and supporting and supplemental materials. The deconstruction, this is where I need you,
Yeah, make
Meredith.
scribble, subject to the following conditions of approval.
the deconstruction
And-
and foundation process must be completed by December 31st, 2025.
Second,
I'll second that. Thank you.
any further discussion? Do a roll call on this one. Rob, how do you vote?
Yes.
Kevin?
Yes.
Joe?
Yes.
And I vote yes as well.
Okay.
Thank you.
So this is the verbal decision. Written decision signed is what triggers the 30-day appeal period. So we'll be moving on that as quickly as possible. This doesn't have any permit conditions of approval. So when the decision is signed, I will also be issuing the zoning permit that goes along with it, and the river hazard permit, because I have all the documentation for that. And we will, since people are local, what we'll probably do is email you when those are ready, so that somebody will come pick them up and sign for the decision. And so we'll keep you posted. We'll get that as soon as we can.
Thank you.
Thanks, Nicole.
Thank you,
Thanks.
Nicole.
Very much. Okay,
Sorry to see.
Thank you, Eric.
But
next on our agenda is 491 Elm Street, James Moore. Because this is a final review of a 2-parcel subdivision, we will need to swear people in.
Madam Chair, I have a strange request. I
Okay,
think my son, we're at a Airbnb, and I think my son locked everybody else out of the house, so I need to run downstairs and let them in. Uh,
That is an
I
unusual
will be back
request.
in 60 seconds. Their timing
Okay.
was impeccable.
Okay. We can certainly await that. That's really funny.
Thank you. All right, hold on.
This is what we get for being connected anywhere around the world. In the world.
Right.
But, you know, you
Yeah.
can still attend.
Yeah, that's right.
So can Joe.
I'm really interested in what the flood mitigation plans for the like for what kind of growth they're going to put on it, and like that's fascinating to me. I'd love to find out what happens over there. You know.
James is back.
Hi, James.
Sorry about that.
And no worries. Is everybody in? Okay.
They are.
Yeah. Okay. Good. Do you want to raise your right hand?
Is Zach gonna be testifying?
Is there anyone else? Oh,
Nope, just me.
okay.
Okay. Steve, is this one that you're gonna be sworn in on? Okay.
Do you solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth under the pains and penalties of perjury?
I do.
Excellent. Let's proceed. We are, you were before us not till two meetings ago for this project, I think.
Yeah,
It's very familiar.
that's right.
I think at the time we didn't have a lot of feedback because it was set up pretty well. So I think it's important to say this, and this is once again, this is the final approval for the division of the lot. This is not, can he build on it? Where can he build on it? What can you build on it? You know, we have to make sure that it is buildable and developable in some way. And we did determine that, or my sense was at that meeting, our last meeting with this gentleman, that the lot was usable, developable, I guess is what we have to make sure that it is. But there are a bunch of other restrictions on that property, given where it's located. So, there was some suggestion, that actually brought a question in my mind, is the, public and private utilities. So, you know, I understand that I think I understand that underground utilities are the wave of the future, the preferred, the thing we want to look towards. Is that correct? I mean, it's like just considered better. And it seems like I just don't know how that starts, because it says if it's okay if it's overhead, as long as the other people in the neighborhood are overhead, and we don't have anywhere that's underground. So where do you draw that? I guess I was just confused about that a little bit. Meredith, go ahead.
So the subdivision chapter, as originally written in the massive zoning rewrite in 2018, was very, very focused on what people think of as large new subdivisions. So the Isabel Circle subdivision that was, 20 plus parcels, there, making sure that you're running the utilities underground, not having new poles put in everywhere, overhead lines makes a lot of sense.
Okay.
Because you're developing a new kind of neighborhood.
Right.
But on a situation, on an infill subdivision where you're just creating one, maybe two new parcels within an already developed neighborhood with roads that are already in place and are heavily trafficked, it requiring that they run them under the street, dig up the whole street, existing street, to run the new lines underground
Okay, so
to
it's
get
really,
to the house doesn't make a lot of sense,
No, it
which
doesn't
is
make any-
why we put, over time, we've put those exemptions in. So rewriting the subdivision chapter even more than we have adjusted it since 2018 is in the plan. It's just, we haven't, I mean, we did add some new provisions now to have general subdivision options.
right,
But it's,
okay,
it's, yeah, that's why that
that makes
clause is here,
sense to
'cause
me. I mean,
somebody was looking at it from a big picture, sort of academic standpoint
Yeah.
versus what actually makes sense in the city of Montpelier most of the time.
right. So that, I mean, that Isabel Circle didn't occur to me as someplace where we're looking for the underground utilities. So it's basically for larger new subdivisions so that they're not adding more poles to a place that doesn't have poles, basically. It's like,
Yeah.
is
I
that-
think it's more geared towards what, what are the wires within the subdivision doing, not how the wires get to the subdivision.
right,
If you only have two lots, all you have is wires getting to the subdivision.
yeah, okay. It seemed like that always comes up and I'm like, that's a stupid
Yeah.
question. You know, okay. Well, that takes care of that for me. Thank you. Um. Other questions or concerns by the board members?
You want to make note of the comments from Public Works that came in late?
Oh, that'd be good. And that was Corey.
Yeah. do
Yeah,
you
go
want me
ahead.
to- Sorry,
Go
I
ahead.
wasn't clear who you wanted
Just
to
wanted
get.
provide some background.
Yeah.
Received it.
Yep.
Makes sense to me, but
Yep, so there has been back and forth about how a driveway would be designed for the new vacant parcel for parcel 2 that would comply with the V-Trans standards. There's back and forth about where to locate that, as well as having new water and sewer lines. That's been updated in the plans in this application since the sketch plan. And then final comments from Corey came in on Friday, Corey Line, who is project manager, I think. Sorry, he didn't include his full signature block from the Department of Public Works. But that the drive that is shown on the site plan as a potential driveway location appears to meet all requirements. The 10-foot radius for the curb cut is acceptable for residential development. And commenting that if most of the driveway is a gravel driveway, there would need to be an asphalt apron placed behind the sidewalk per the B71B standards. That's a Vermont transportation standard. And a final note that there's 2 notes that construction and access permit will be required from the Department of Public Works to construct the driveway. And as part of that, because it's a new curb cut over an existing sidewalk, that whoever does that work will need to coordinate with the Department of Public Works to get the appropriate sidewalk and curbing standards, because they'll need to be very specific, gradations down to the driveway and how you deal with the curbs so that it matches as well as just meets all the necessary standards for safety. So those are really comments about future permitting requirements to be on file for the applicant so that they know what those next steps are.
So the other thing that I did want to point out about this application that we looked at it last time and felt that it was that once again, this was from a 1 to a 2 lot subdivision and that they did not need to have a landscaping plan for this, that was considered something they could figure out themselves. Um,
Sorry, yeah, I left a couple notes in here from the prior one. Sorry. Didn't get 100% updated.
all right. I mean, I think, the other question put out here is that, the board will need to determine whether the proposed subdivision is compatible with and contains the traditional settlement patterns in the city and the Elm Street neighborhood. And I think that it both does that, and it's also the residential neighborhood that it's part of is also highlighted for infill, if I'm correct, right? So this is actually exactly what we want to see happen. So James, are you, let's see the application here. Is the final plat and everything in here all up to speed? I guess I do expect you to read that. I'm like, yeah, it looks good to
Yeah.
me. Okay.
We can flag our resident surveyor to make sure that I didn't miss that if there's anything missing in there.
No, I think we're good. It's maybe an issue we haven't dealt with, but so we're showing, like, as we should, I think we've been through this before, showing the floodplain. And we're also showing, the river corridor, and it's called out as the ANR river corridor. But in Montpelier, it's like we sort of accepted what was once at one time and probably still is the same as the ANR river corridor, but they're not the same. So ANR changes the river corridor, Montpelier doesn't change necessarily, right?
So Montpelier only regulates a certain stretch of river corridor. And so that's north of Cummings Street on the North Branch. And Montpelier had argued for sort of a narrowing of that river corridor in places because of certain features like bridges, things like that. The line that is showing on the plat right now, that it does say the Vermont line, because that's where the GIS data was better, actually matches with what Montpelier pushed back on and said, this is what we want. So those lines actually right now do match up. There are other parts in the city where the state regulates river corridor for anything that triggers Act 250, and Montpelier just doesn't. If that's what you're trying
Well, I
to,
think what I was gonna say is that ANR changes the river corridor. It's not gonna change what's regulated by the city of Montpelier.
no, and what's on this plat right now? I mean, maybe what you could say is try and have, I'm trying to remember, does the plat have a note as to the date that those two lines were put on? Because the 100-year floodplain can change too, right?
So-
We're actually expecting updated
Right.
maps from FEMA within, we thought it was going to be this summer, but now last I heard it was like anywhere within the next 2 years. That could change where that 100-year floodplain goes. So as long as there's a notation on the plat about it being set, for a certain time, and that may
Yep.
change pending future maps, I think we're fine. Is that note on there?
2024,
Where,
Okay.
and which map is that you're looking at?
the plat.
Actually.
Yeah.
Hold on, I can also pull it
Yeah,
up.
so it's note 4, floodway and river corridor. It's what page 200 of the entire. Yeah, right. No, that's the wastewater plan.
Hold on.
It's got the plat.
Oh, okay, that one. So on the wastewater plan, I'd just like to make a note that the river is named the Connecticut River and not the North Branch.
Oh.
Oops. That doesn't get recorded.
I'm so glad you pointed that out. I cannot wait to bring that to the attention of the engineering firm and my buddy at MSK Engineering who did that. That's fantastic. I will.
Only an engineer would do that. A surveyor would never make that mistake.
That's right.
I was like looking at it, and I'm like, do I need my glasses? I was like, no, that's really what it says. Okay,
No, I think the date's on there, that makes sense,
on the dates on the plat, the actual plat.
for where the date which they got that.
Okay.
Information from, so. I think it's- I think the big change, the sort of sewer and water and driveway, configuration, although not set in stone, clearly, it works to develop the lot.
Yeah.
However they end up doing it, so.
Yeah, I think so too. Somebody like to make a motion?
Oh, I guess the Conservation Commission notes came in since we were last here. Looked at this, guessing they didn't have any major concerns that we have to evaluate.
No.
Nope. No objections to the proposal or any recommendations or comments. They did have a meeting on it and the letters in the packet.
I'll make motions. Motion to approve a 2-parcel subdivision at 491 Elm Street as presented in application number Z 2025-0020 and supporting and supplemental materials, subject to the following conditions of approval. Within 180 days of this decision, applicant shall record the final survey plat in the Montpelier land records per procedures detailed in 4405 of the zoning regulations, including the locations of all applicable survey rods and markers.
I'll second.
Okay, any further discussion? Let's do this one by roll call. Rob,
Yes.
Kevin,
Yes.
Joe,
Yes.
me, yes. Thanks very much, James, you're all set.
So
I appreciate that. I also, if I could, Madam Chair, take a moment to say thank you to Ms. Crandall and all the city staff who helped out. I had a number of questions and I appreciate the thoroughness and the helpful responses.
Great, thank you.
So James, just remember, official decision that triggers the appeal period is the written decision. So we've got 2 coming out of tonight, so we're get both of them as soon as we can, but we can't work on both at the exact same time.
Can I ask a question on that?
Yes,
Great. Just trying to think about the timing because I know that the surveyor also needs to get their plat actually in and signed. So just for process, I'm waiting for the final decision to come out from you. And after that, we can file the plat to be signed by the chair. Is that correct?
So if there were no amendments to the plat, so you can get me the Mylar plat whenever you're ready. Because they can, I mean, technically they can be signed on the same day if need be. It'd be nice if it was a little spaced out. But yeah, no, we can, because when the decision is issued, because there's no pre-permit conditions, I'll be signing the permit and say, actually, you know what? Talk to your attorney. Your attorney might want you to wait till the end of the appeal period to record the
Yeah,
plat. They might want you
No.
to record the plat till the appeal period is over. Talk with them.
Okay,
I would talk with them.
thank you.
I know you already own the parcel, so there's less of an issue there for that one. But I would talk to your attorney.
Great. Will do.
Thank you. All right. Last thing on here is we have meeting minutes from last time, which I have read and did not find any changes necessary. Anybody else?
Good with the minutes, motion approved.
Second,
Seconded.
all those in favor?
I,
Aye.
Those opposed? Okay. So, next regular meeting is Monday, May 5th, pending DRB confirm.
I have no applications for May 5th.
Okay.
So the next, since as long as you guys don't want to meet for some administrative matter, the next meeting would actually be Monday, May 19th. And I have an application I'm waiting to get in. If they get it in by this Friday, then we'll have an application for the 19th.
Can I ask when the terms are up in June? How that works?
Yes, give me, I think I have those dates on the website. Give me a minute. I think I've put those on here. Sharon, your term expires June 8th. Rob expires June 8th and Jean expires June 8th.
Mine's next year. Six.
Kevin,
They don't
yes,
let you
you're
off
2020. Yeah, you're 2026.
2050.
No comment.
Okay.
Yes,
so-
June 8th would be an expiration, so that is.
So I would do the first meeting of that because that's,
Yes,
Yeah.
the first meeting of June is June 2nd. So for anyone who is not asking to be reappointed, if you, Jean, or Rob, June 2nd would be the last meetings.
okay. I mean, I'd like it to be known that I will not be continuing after June 8th. Just so many other things to do. So I really enjoyed it. It's just fun stuff as far as I'm considering, but I don't feel like I have enough time to give it
Yeah,
all
I mean,
that I
it does
should.
It does take some time, but I found that it's an invaluable way to stay in touch with the community.
Oh yeah, it's great.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
beat the bushes for other DRB members, please.
Do we have a full roster right now?
No, we're short one.
Short an
Three,
alternate,
four.
right?
Yeah, we're still short and we're short one right now. Yep. Yeah, I
The other
think
thing,
I
I
did
don't-
the agenda, did a default, so I didn't, it says Brian listed as an alternate, but he's not.
So I don't think this will interfere at all, but on May 15th, the next meeting is the 18th, right?
19.
19th.
19th. I'm having wrist surgery, and I'm pretty sure I'll be fine by then.
Okay, so yeah.
Yeah.
15th, it's a Thursday, 19th is the Monday.
Good luck with that.
Thanks.
That's a tricky surgery.
I know.
A lot of old
well, I
bones.
guess I was just gonna say that I intend to,
Continue.
ask, city council's permission to, do another term. But, if they'll let me, I never know.
You never know.
But maybe it makes sense to update the website with the application link. You could just, both of our terms expire, so just put the link by both of us, just
Yeah.
so that
Well, good.
Yeah,
it's there.
yep, no, that's a good idea. That's a good idea to have that link in multiple places as it highlights.
Yeah.
That we need people.
Yeah.
You don't have to wait for me to make that note to myself. It's okay.
Okay. I don't know. All right. So any other business?
I think we generally put it up to general public comment if there's anyone left here, as a courtesy, so we do that.
Okay.
Is there any? Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.